What's up, gamers? Matt here with That's Fair Podcasting. Now, I've played video games most of my life, and throughout the decades of video games, it has seemed like in a lot of ways that the decades just got better and better, I guess until now. But when you break it down into your favorite decade, what is your favorite decade if you had to break it down into video games? Now, mine go clear back to playing way back in the arcades, popping quarters in the machines, all the way to the home consoles to where it became more of a way of life for the longest time. And I'm just curious because I want to go over, from my point of view, what my favorite decade is overall, and I want to know what your favorite decade is. Stay tuned. As I get older, no doubt, I slow down. But the one thing that's not slowing down is the fact that I'm a gamer through and through. And I will say this, I'm going now through my 5th decade of gaming, and again, no signs of slowing down. But if you are new here, please feel free to subscribe to my channel, That's Fair Podcasting. Please like my video if you don't mind, help me in that algorithm. And if you don't do any of those, that's totally fine. You just wanna watch this video on the decades through video gaming, through my perspective. And what is your favorite decade versus mine? Thanks for sticking with me. I sincerely appreciate it. I'm a product of the 80s. I'm a Gen Xer, and I reminisce about the 80s all the time. I literally grew up in the prime time influence of aging when it comes to the 80s. I was 8 to 18 from 1980 to 1990. And I gotta say, honestly, the decade is phenomenal. And as a kid, obviously you start off with toys first. I mean, I had the greatest decade of toys. This could be another era for another channel, another video for some other time. But I mean, I had them all, man. I had He-Man, I had G.I. Joe, I had Mask. I had it all when it came to toys in the 80s. But then the video game influence started to hit me right around the early 80s, probably around 82. And it started with Pac-Man by Bally Midway. And this started bringing me to the arcades religiously. I mean, I would dig around the house for quarters, dig in the couches for quarters. We'd have family get-togethers. Always had a grandpa. My grandpa Jack always wore those loose-fitting janitor-like pants, and they're always full of quarters, full of change. And he'd sit down and it would spill out into the couch, and I'd be sure not to tell him because we only lived 3 blocks from a near arcade. And anyway, having said that, I had played, just religiously started playing these arcade games in the 80s. I mean, literally, from the smells of the arcades, you could smell, back then kids were smoking, you could literally smell cigarette smoke, Aquanet, body odor, popcorn, and the electronics of the video games. Those were all the smells that made up an arcade, and the noises that followed were something else. But anyway, that was my first influence into video gaming in the 1980s. And then it started bringing it home to you. You had the Nintendo Entertainment System. I want to say it came out in around 85, I could be wrong, but that brought it into your living room for the first time, like don't get me wrong, Atari did it too, but there was a massive crash of video games around 82 or 83. And then Nintendo rose above it all and brought it back to a forefront that I don't think ever really left gamers to this point. And the mid-80s were a phenomenal craze, a massive uprising when it came to Nintendo, because again, it brought you in to your living room and allowed you to play games like that Duck Hunt. That was like one of the first things you played, but Mario Brothers, obviously you played that. And that you played that one religiously, but then I started moving on to games like Excite Bike and Choplifter. And there was just so many different games. 10-Yard Fight was a big one. And, so it revolutionized the way video games were brought into the house, into your living room. And then in the later 80s, right around 87, my dad bought a computer called the Commodore 64. And I was able to, probably shouldn't say this, but I think the statute of limitations is up by now. I would bootleg discs and play arcade games like Commando, and there was even a ninja RPG called Moebius, and Defender of the Crown. I got to play all these different games on the Commodore 64 that literally were a little bit better graphical than the Nintendo, just couldn't quite reach what the Nintendo brought. But then the 1990s would come along and it would literally just spread like wildfire even more. And by that, I mean, you know, by 1988, I had obviously the Nintendo, and then I had what was called the very first Sega system. But then 1990 came around, and the early 90s really spawned the Sega Genesis and the SNES, the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. And I think that between the two consoles my whole life, the SNES and the Xbox 360 are probably my all-time favorite consoles. It probably gave me the greatest time of gaming, even though my favorite decade would prove that wrong. But having said that, you know, I started with the SNES, and it had me and my ex Danielle, we would sometimes call into work and play the Final Fantasy 1, 2, and 3 on there together, and play that for hours, losing sleep, being pissed off and grumpy the next day because we lost sleep. But it didn't matter. We had to get back home, and we had to play Final Fantasy right away so we could move on to the next installment. And the SNES really brought out so much in me. My best friend Jeremy, who lived in the same apartment complex as me in Windsor, Colorado, he had the Sega Genesis, and I don't remember the football game, but we'd play that together. And then I'd go home and with Danielle, we'd play, you know, the Final Fantasies. And then I moved on to a Spider-Man game called Maximum Carnage, which was so damn hard, but so damn fun at the same time that I never completed it, but I never gave up until I gave up. And so Maximum Carnage was a really good game too. But yeah, you know, then along would come the Nintendo 64. And once again, Nintendo found a way to push the video game farther into that stratosphere. I remember my very first game on the Nintendo 64 being Mario Kart and then Madden 97. And I'm telling you, Mario Kart to this day, I might have bruises or at least permanent lumps in my arms because the same woman that I played Final Fantasy with when I was with her, Danielle, we would play Mario Kart together, and I would, you know, I would take the fake diamond that exploded and put it in with the real diamonds because I always managed to take the lead. She'd always managed to hit it, and then my arm would take a beating, and rightfully so. It's kind of a cheap move. But anyway, long story short, from 90 to 2000 was a hell of a decade. It really pushed the video games out there. And there were so many great video games on the Nintendo 64, like Rogue Squadron that I played. I even played the Mortal Kombats, but I also played, even though I started Mortal Kombat on the SNES, I remember the Nintendo 64 bringing out some Mortal Kombat games, but I even remember a spin-off game called Sub-Zero, which was a really fun game. I think it was a very underrated game, but from 90 to 2000, really spawned the Maddens, started to really take off, and I'm still heavy into football, but not the Maddens anymore. My blood pressure can't handle the Madden franchise anymore. But yeah, so by the time 2000 came along, it was going strong, and in 2001, I bought the Xbox. And, you know, as each decade moved along with each new console, you would tell yourself as you're watching this, there is no way in hell these graphics are going to get better than this. When you go back and play the regular Xbox, like Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, yeah, didn't age well graphically, though it's still my favorite game of all time. But the Xbox, I was primarily Xbox in 2001, and I stuck with Microsoft. I played the Xbox, and I got so many different games moving along that from 2000 to 2010, I'm telling you, man, that decade blew up. And along would come the 360, which I gotta tell you, I have more games for the Xbox 360 on my shelf in the closet than I do any other video game console. It blew up. I mean, it brought you the Mass Effects. It started off the Assassin's Creeds. To me, it was the Star Wars Battlefronts. Now remember, I'm missing a lot of video games because I'm talking about this through my perspective and my genre and taste of video games. But I was heavy into the Assassin's Creeds 2007, and then, you know, along would come Mass Effect. You know, the RPG genre really exploded from, you know, 2000 to 2010. Literally, it blew up. You started having what was called the Star Wars Force Unleashed. Again, talking about video games through my eyes. You know, Alpha Protocol would come out at the very end of it by Obsidian in 2010. But I played all these games on this system. I know I'm missing so many games that you guys absolutely fell in love with. Was never a big Halo guy. Gonna tell you that right now. But it was a magical time. And then when 2010, here is my favorite decade, 2010 to 2020. Now, my favorite games came out before 2010. But when the Xbox One dropped, even though I played a lot of the same games on the 360, it was the games overall that dropped out into our living rooms. It would be Elder Scrolls Skyrim. Now, in 2000 to 2010, we had the best Fallout games, in my opinion. 2010, you can count as Fallout New Vegas, but before that, you had Fallout 3. But in 2010, you had Fallout New Vegas. The Assassin's Creeds were really skyrocketing at this time with Unity, with Black Flag, with Rogue, with Syndicate. They didn't get better probably really after, in my opinion, Unity because of the format. And as they got newer, I think the Assassin's Creeds changed a little much for the worse. Even though unpopular opinion, I actually enjoyed the RPG format, but I still prefer the single player story narrative driven experience in Assassin's Creed, not the RPG. Even though, again, yes, I enjoyed the RPG element. But the Xbox One came out and it brought Skyrim to the Xbox One. You got your anniversary edition. You started getting your modding communities. All this other shit started happening with Skyrim. Skyrim is probably the game, honestly, of the 2010s to 2020. I'm sorry, probably not a debate there in a lot of ways. Skyrim in 2011 was the game, is the main reason why that decade, because I probably played it for a good 8 years on and off. Every once in a while, I'll go back to it with different mods. But then the State of Decay franchise happened in that decade, my favorite decade. 2013, you had 1, and in 2018, State of Decay 2. So there were also the platforms of the PlayStation 3 and 4 eventually launching around those times. I believe the PlayStation 3 was before 2010, but we had the PS4 that would launch after 2010, and it gave me some of the greatest games to this day I have ever played in my life. The first Last of Us, not the second one, that's garbage. But I had Days Gone, I had Detroit, I think it's called Detroit Become Human. And I believe at the very end of that decade, we had Ghost of Tsushima. But I think, don't quote me on that. But anyway, long story short, from 2010 to 2020, that was my favorite decade. Even though it didn't have my all-time favorite video games, it had the largest stretch of gaming in the longest run of them that were so consistent. But unfortunately, what goes up must come down. And towards the end of that decade is when we started seeing that progressive shit. Now, 2020 to present so far. Right now, we have the Xbox Series S and X, we have the PS5, there's Steam, there's PC platforms. I don't have PC, I'm a lowly console player. I've always said this. And yes, that's on me. But there are some big hits that came out after 2020 that have really, brought me. I didn't actually experience Ghost of Tsushima until after 2020. I bought it late, but I played a game called Rise of the Ronin, which to this day is still to me a golden game. I'm telling you. Crimson Desert, a fairly newer game, came out. But again, when I say what goes up must come down. And you had Assassin's Creed starting to literally fall by these progressive devs in the likes of Shadows. Don't need to go over it. It's beating a dead horse at this point. You know why. But then you had other slops just being dropped, like South of Midnight, Unknown 9 Awakening. You have all these different video games from these, I guess you can call them independent developers, but they were progressive. They were basically partnering with the likes of Sweet Baby Inc. and going to dog shit. And they deserve it. They deserve it. I mean, I don't need to go into what's going on with the Halo franchise right now. All of the good content creators have covered this. You know what I'm talking about. Halo is probably dead in the water because, again, you get these idiots that get a hold of these franchises, have no idea of the concept of the actual lore that gave them what people want to see. It gave them the popularity. It gave them that stratosphere that literally felt like an endless ability to just keep going, and they ruined it. They torched these once great franchises by putting in their own progressive messaging, and they have destroyed these franchises. They are destroying gaming. They are the root rot of gaming, and they are failing. And that's what's sad. But I guess in the long run, the reason why 2010 to 2020, again, even though towards the end of that decade, we started seeing that progressive shit. It gave me the most of my favorite franchises, and it was very consistent, and it brought out all of these different things. Again, I am so sorry that I've left so many out. Again, through my perspective, I'm a massive Dungeons and Dragons player, so I'm an RPG guy and a single player story narrative driven guy. But as of right now, me and my wife are still currently playing now 7 Days to Die 3.1. We're building, we're moving forward with that game. But there's been so much shit that has been pumped out that it's so hard to keep faith in the video game industry nowadays that it's just, and ultimately too, it's probably too much of an online push. There's too many of these younger generations playing like the PlayStations that are so caught up in the co-op or the online games anyway, that they don't see the real art and beauty in video games. Again, I'm a Gen Xer. I got to grow up watching this revolutionize into something grand. And this younger generations really missed out on watching the evolution of video games like I got to see. Now, the next few years show a lot of promise, guys. I'm not gonna lie to you. Gamers, we have a lot to look forward to, at least in the RPG genre of things. We have things coming out like Exodus. We have The Expanse Osiris Reborn. Just in over a month, we have The Blood of Dawnwalker. I'm telling you, the Rebel Wolves, I think, are a very trustworthy developing studio. I think they're gonna be bringing us a great game next month. Sometime in September, I should say. It is August as of this video, August 2nd. But, you know, the Rebel Wolves are bringing us a very, I feel that Rebel Wolves with Blood of Dawnwalker, Archetype Entertainment with Exodus, and Owlcat Games with The Expanse Osiris Reborn are bringing us back a lot of very trustworthy genre RPGs. I can't say the same for BioWare with the latest Mass Effect that they're trying to push out. After Dragon Age, the Veilguard, I think that it left a bad taste in our mouth. Trust is very hard to come by now, and rightfully so. I'm pulling for BioWare though. That's not to say that I'm not. But yes, the next few years show a lot of promise. But guys, that's really all I had. I'm very sorry that this video ran over. Tell me what your favorite decade is. Very interested in hearing what your favorite decade was in video gaming and why. Please tell me in the comment sections. I still talk to every one of you. My channel's small enough. I'm only at 1,300 subscribers right now. Thank you for the subscribers that have piled on. I appreciate it. But I'm still small enough to where I can literally have a conversation with you guys. And I do, as of right now, why I still can enjoy talking to you. But again, that is all I had. Please feel free to like my video. Help me on that algorithm. Please subscribe to my channel if you don't mind. And if you don't do any of those, thank you for sticking with me about basically the evolution of video games and why my favorite decade was 2010 to 2020. And again, tell me your favorite decade in the comment section and why. But thank you so much for joining me here. And to all you gamers out there, all love to you, and I'm outro.